Alright, so we're back. We have the long grain parboiled rice, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I can say safely I have 4 cups in here. So it's just gonna parboil. And this is typically what we do as Africans, Nigerians, when we cook jollof rice. We try to get the starch out because at the end you want a rice that comes out fluffy and good. The texture gets it to be fluffy. We don't like too much starch because this is really a staple. We eat a lot of rice, and because we eat a lot of rice, we avoid having to have so much starch in our rice. So while that is boiling, it's just gonna parboil for a few minutes. I'm gonna get getting ingredients for my sauce ready. I love using my sweet yellow onions. I'm not a fan of the purple onions. I find them too strong. So I find that with the yellow onions, a lot of times you have the sweet ones, and that sweet always lends to additional flavor for me in my meals. This is one of those times where using the sweet yellow onion, this is going to be blended. So I'm blending my onions. I put them right at the bottom. Now I'm blending this onion along with, this is all going to go into the sauce that will make that jollof rice. Now the next thing I do is with a whole can of plum tomatoes. This has already been opened. I'm just going to get rid of some excess liquid. And these canned tomatoes will be blended in the blender. Yes, you will need the entire can because we're making a form of tomato, we would call it a stew. Is a stew that will be used in making the coconut jollof rice. So this is pretty much getting these tomatoes blended is what I'm doing right now. Now some folks who like to make theirs really spicy, this is your chance. You can blend this in with some fresh habanero peppers, cut in with your onions, blend them all together. Now what that does is you get a good blended tomato mixed in with onions, pepper. You might think I'm not using any pepper, but I will, except this time I'm using a dry one, so I don't need to blend it. I think I got everything pretty much. Now this usually helps when you put a little bit, just a little bit of this in here so that it can blend smoothly. And I'm going to cover this up. Here we are. Get that. Now with this blended, there's no harm. I find there's no harm mixing all this in at this point. And that will be set aside. Now that rice is parboiled. As I'm sure you know, we are going right ahead to wash that rice and get rid of the starch, just like I indicated. I'm going to turn that off. And for me, the rule is, you have so many rules when it comes to cooking. The rule is I'm going to wash this rice. As you can see, the starch is coming right on the top. I'm going to wash off the starch to the point where I notice that my water is getting clearer. You don't want to put your fingers in right away because it's really hot. So you pour the water and strain it for now. I'm using cold water. Sometimes I will touch it just to feel if it's safe to wash it. And it is. At this point it is safe. This is no longer hot. So this is what I do. This is a very easy process if you're someone who likes to cook. Nigerians love cooking from scratch. And I tell you, it makes a whole lot of difference when you do that. Now, another thing, foods tend to keep. When we cook, it tends to keep, it doesn't become leftover. You can cook a whole pot because we have large families. They can come in at any time and you can serve them something to eat. And you can also cook for the week. Decide, oh, I've got a whole pot of jollof rice sitting in my refrigerator. If you want to divide it up in portions, it always works well to divide it up in portions. It's just going to taste as good as the first day, trust me. So it's quite an economical way of cooking. Saves you money from eating out every day. There's no harm in eating out. No harm at all. But there's also no harm in having a home-cooked meal. So this exercise is really barely taking 5 minutes. This is a very quick thing to do. Now you notice that water is gradually coming clearer. The starch from the rice, when I rubbed it together, is really come off from the rice. That right there is your rule when you're cooking a long grain parboiled rice. So this is it. We don't really have any more starch. Now, I said this was coconut rice. And as I'm boiling this rice, it's ready to go. I'm going to be putting once again a pinch of salt into this rice for seasoning. And then I will be pouring, yes, from your local grocery store, you can pick up a can of coconut milk. And you pour that right in. And there's something else I use here. If you look closely, this is virgin coconut oil. Virgin coconut oil. I'm going to add here probably a spoon. A little bit more than a spoon. I'm talking about your tablespoon of this virgin. Oh, it smells so good. If you love exotic food and you think it's so hard to make, just keep watching. This is really easy. So I got here really 2 spoons is what I had at the end of the day, because I like to taste the coconut in this rice whenever I make it, and this brings out that coconut flavor so much more. So alright, so now we're going to turn in a little bit of hot water. I'm going to put a little bit of water in this rice, and I'm going to measure if you can see what it looks like. This is barely 1/4 of an inch above the rice, and I can put it back to the boil. Barely 1/4 of an inch above the level of the rice, and this is gonna boil till it's cooked. Put that up. Alright, and we will be back to make that sauce for the rice once the rice is done. So we got a seasoned chicken, a Cornish hen. It's been sitting for an hour. It's ready to fry. So taking it out of the refrigerator, and very carefully I have here a frying pan. Now, one of my rules is I love the flavor of peanut oil. Now, you don't have to use peanut oil. I love that flavor when I make my potted chicken. And I will be placing it in the pan one at a time, just so that it can become golden and ready to go in the oven. Right, we have the coconut rice, which has also been boiling. Can you see how creamy and it's pretty much ready to go? We're just going to set it aside as well and make the sauce. And then we would all bring everything together, because this rice will be tossed in a sauce, which makes it the jollof rice, and the coconut cream, or should I call it the coconut milk with the coconut butter, is what makes it a coconut jollof rice. And that's all you do with your rice. Pretty simple. This rice is ready to go. We're just setting it aside, and we're going to be making the sauce to toss this rice in it. This makes a very delicious meal, and you would love this. Notice our chicken is nice and golden, beautifully nice and golden. It's just the perfect time to get this out. Have a nicely coated golden chicken. This is just I'm going to call it a pre-fry, because I didn't really give it enough time to cook through. We Africans, we love our meats well done. We love our chickens well done. So this is not quite fully cooked, but you can see it looks pretty. It smells so good. And now for the last flap, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more cayenne pepper. I also use, this is a smoked paprika. This is very flavorful. I use this on my chicken. And I am pretty generous with this. And then I have my smoked, ground, sun-dried habanero peppers. Now this tends to give it somewhat of a blackened look when it's all done. Now you might think, isn't that too much heat? No, it's not. It's not. You will thoroughly enjoy this when it's finished. And I'm going to be putting just a little smidget of my, if I can find it, there we go, my favorite, once again, because it's less sodium. So I'm going to sprinkle that. All right, so now I'm going to toss this together. Oh, that smells so good. That smells so good. I wish you were right here in Winnie's kitchen. Okay, this is nicely tossed. I'm going to place it in a Pyrex baking dish. You be careful when you do this because it is still hot. We just got it out. I'm just going to place it. There's really no rule to how you place it as long as you get it all in there, which I'm attempting to do. We just really have only 8 pieces, which is same as 2 whole Cornish hens. And this actually now goes to the oven, which is preheated to 350. We're not covering this at all. This is going to bake. I've never really left this for longer than half an hour. Sometimes it may not even take up to half an hour. I'm going to set this aside. I have my oven already preheated. And I would gently put this in the oven to finish baking. There we go. All right. Now, did you notice I actually will be using some beautiful stock out of my oil, which was used in making frying the chicken. That will be my stock as I proceed to saute onions and some chopped garlic together. I chopped 2 large cloves of garlic, a half onion of the yellow onion. And let's get here. Remember, this is a coconut jollof rice. At this point, you just need enough of the oil to get your sauce. We'll still call it a tomato stew is what we call it. And you might choose to call it a sauce. So really, that's about all I need. And it's still hot, so I go ahead and make sure I have that turned up so that it can start frying my onions. I'm doing the same thing with my chopped up garlic. It's 2 large cloves. All right. Now, as soon as this begins to saute, I will be adding your tomato paste that you get from your local grocery store. I've already opened this up and scooped it out. This will just take a minute or two to start sizzling here, and we'll be ready to get this sauce going. Alright, we have the onions and garlic sauteing very nicely. You notice there's this slightly golden color to this, the look. I like to do this because, once again, my love for sweet yellow onions. When the saute comes to golden, it really brings out the sweetness more out of the onion. And that contrast lends so well to the outcome of what you're cooking. The contrast of getting the sweet out of the onion, and of course not letting your garlic burn while it's sauteing, and then you end up losing the flavor and might get a bitter taste from the burn. So I have my tomato paste mixing in. You just want to mix it in evenly because we're going to be adding the ground tomato to this sauce. The ground tomato is going to come in and add to the to this sauce, and I believe it's time to do that. Remember how we ground up tomato with onion? The remaining half onion was all ground up in here. Once again, you mix this very well so that it can mix in, and you're going to allow this to stew. I will come back and add my seasonings. I'm always conscious when I make this meal not to overpower my coconut. The coconut flavor, it's all about the coconut for me on this one. I don't like to overpower my coconut, and for that reason I'm very careful with the seasonings I use with this stew. This is just going to boil until the tomatoes are cooking very well, and then we can add the seasonings to it. So we have a stew boiling, stewing very nicely, as you can see. What a beautiful color that is. I'm going to be throwing in my bay leaf. I'm using 2 bay leaves. I love the fresh bay leaves. Don't get me wrong, everything works, fresh or dry bay leaves. I'm just more fond of my fresh bay leaves, which I also get from my local grocery store. And now that I have this slightly boiling, I'm going to mix in my seasonings. I'm adding a little smidget of curry in here, which is just about a half teaspoon. 3 in here. I'm also adding my chicken knorr to this seasoning. Now don't forget, we have quite a few sweets. Now I'm adding I never did grind up. If you remember, I ground my tomatoes without grinding any fresh habanero. So my sun-dried ground habanero is actually what I use. I can alternate it. It really doesn't matter. This is so flavorful. You have to be very careful when you use this. If you have an African store near where you live, grocery African store, and you would like to try using the sun-dried ground habaneros, you can go in and ask, and they always sell that. You mix this in nicely. Now I'm going to still add a little bit of seasoning to this as it's boiling. You remember my Sazon Tropical? Yes. I'm going to add some of that in here. And that will continue to boil. You always have to be careful when your tomato stew boils up because it can spark. You want to either lower your heat when that happens, and then later on you bring it back to the boil. But it's all good. That's what it should do. Now, when you cook a tomato stew, as we call it in Nigeria, that tomato needs to cook to almost when it starts looking like it's drying out. And you're going to notice when that begins to happen. That's pretty much about when we're going to be ready to toss it in the coconut rice.